What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, it's my team selection for Game Week 20. So I'm going to run you through how the team is looking, thoughts on transfers that I could make this week, and also future plans as well. And I'll quickly run you through how I did in Game Week 19. So if you enjoyed the video, make sure to give it a like and hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. And make sure to take advantage of Fantasy Football Hub's 30% off 30-day free trial offer that is, as I'm told, going to stop by the Game Week 20 deadline. So if you're interested in checking that out, make sure to click the link in the description below, and more on that to come later. So let's take a quick look at how I did in Game Week 19, and it was a decent week. I scored 94 points, which took me from 341k to 212k, basically repairing the damage of the previous 2 red arrows. I used 3 of my 4 transfers, so I did Saliba to Anderson and Fernandes to Eze, which freed up the funds to let me do Raul Jimenez to Isak. In the end, Jimenez started against Bournemouth after only starting against Chelsea a few days before and got a 9-pointer, so I'm actually down on points for that transfer because Isak only got 7, but I do have one less headache to have to worry about moving forward. With the other 2 moves, Anderson, you could definitely argue that Castagna is the more exciting pick. But essentially, I went for the guy that's absolutely nailed as long as he's fit and available. With Castagna, once Tete is back, there are some slight concerns there. For what it's worth, if you've got Castagna, by the time Tete is a problem, you might not even need your Fulham defender. So I probably should have gone for Castagna, but it's just a minor thing. I'm happy enough with Anderson. And then Eze, it was very close between him and Sarr. I almost took the cheaper option with good minutes, good underlying numbers. But again, I just went for the guy that is 100% nailed on, no matter what changes Glasner makes to that attack. I don't see Sarr getting benched anytime soon, but I definitely don't see Eze getting benched. And also, I got a 10-pointer, so I'm up 8 points by going for him over Sarr. I can't complain too much. Elsewhere, I benched in Burmo, who wiped out my double Arsenal clean sheet. But once again, Arsenal conceded hardly any chances. Apart from that in Burmo goal, I don't really remember Brentford troubling Arsenal too much. They finished on 0.33 expected goals conceded. That's now 6 of the last 8 games where it's 0.33 or below. That is absolutely ridiculous. With Burmo, yeah, he got me 7 points on the bench, not ideal, but the only 2 attackers that got less than that I played were Palmer, who I was never going to bench, and Solanke, who had Wolves at home. And I'd always play him over Burmo with Arsenal at home, so I don't regret that decision one bit. Isak got 7, João Pedro 9, Eze 10, Salah captain 32, and then Rodgers got me 11 points as well. The only slight negative was that he picked up his 5th yellow card, so he's suspended for Game Week 20. But if he was going to do that, I'm glad he did it in a game where he got me a goal and assist. Elsewhere, Munoz 2 points, came very close to scoring, happy with him moving forward, and Trent 15-pointer, which is more than welcome, because I brought him into my squad before I got Isak. I could have gone for Isak instead. It's not been great up until this week. 15-pointer was huge. And that's now 5 attacking returns and 7 clean sheets in 17 matches for Trent. So he's definitely worth the money. And overall, just a brilliant week, 94 points. Can that be repeated in Game Week 20? Unlikely, but let's talk about it anyway. So for Game Week 20, I've got 2 free transfers, but just 0.1 million in the bank. But I am quite happy with how things are set up this week. So I no longer have the Arsenal triple up on defence, but I do still have a double up of Raya and Gabriel. I'm not necessarily expecting them to get a clean sheet this week against Brighton away, but there's not really anyone else that I want to swap them for right now. I think medium to long term, there is a good chance that both of those players will be sold. I'm just not sure when and who for. So for example, Liverpool and Everton will probably have a double game week in 24 or 25. So Raya could go to Pickford or Alisson, but Pickford's fixtures don't get better until 24 onwards. And with Alisson, if I bring him in, that would be my 3rd Liverpool player. And I just don't know if I want to block that spot so early. I might end up wanting to go for Arne Slot as assistant manager because I've already used my triple captain. Or if there's attacking injuries and someone like Diaz, Gakpo, Nunez, whoever it is, has great minutes, I might want to go for them instead. So I'm going to leave that option open a little bit longer. And if I do go for Pickford in goal, it might be that I want to do Gabriel to Van Dijk. But again, it's not a move that I'm really that in a rush to do. Like I might do Gabriel to Lewis Hall to free up funds as well and not go for a double game week player because I've used the slots elsewhere. But with Lewis Hall having Spurs away this week, there's no great benefit to getting him in instead of Gabriel if I don't need the funds for any other moves. Like Lewis Hall is attacking, but so is Gabriel. So I'm not going to make any transfers on those two, but I think over the coming weeks I consider that a little bit more. I'm playing Anderson over Munoz. I'm not sure if I'm completely happy about it because of how attacking Munoz is, but I expect Chelsea to score. And I think clean sheet-wise, things look a lot better for Fulham. And Anderson could go and get me a goal from a set piece. I don't think he's a slouch in that regard. So hopefully, clean sheet attack and return there. And Munoz not to go absolutely mad from that right wing-back position. I think Munoz will be in the 11 more often than not moving forward. But this week, with a home game for both of them, and Ipswich at home looking much better than Chelsea at home, that's what I'm going to go for. And then Trent Alexander-Arnold against Man United at home. I hate to say it, but the way Man United are playing right now, there's a good chance that Liverpool score a lot of goals and also keep a clean sheet. I think the fact Bruno Fernandes is back will help Man United. But Liverpool playing so well this season, I'm just not sure Man United will be able to break them down unless they get the chance on a counter or something like that. And we know how good Trent can be from an attacking perspective as well. So no plans for any transfers in defence. I think any players that I might want to bring in are just better in future weeks, not this one. So I'd rather just roll the transfer than making a defender move. Even Greaves on my bench, right? He's started to get back into the team for Ipswich. Not a major issue, or not a major benefit because I'm not going to play him that often. But I've even looked at future weeks. Like Ipswich have, I think it's Southampton at home in game week 24. That might even help me out long term. So I think in general, the defence is pretty well set up. There's no one major I feel like I'm missing, at least not for game week 20. So in midfield, as you might imagine, Mo Salah is my captain. There's no room for sentiment in FPL. As much as I want Man United to win that game, deep down I know it's not going to happen. And unfortunately, I could see another Salah big score here at Anfield. So he's my captain going absolutely nowhere. Neither is Cole Palmer. Some people might have a few concerns about Palmer because recently he's not been great. He's blanked in 3 of the last 4, and that's against Brentford at home, Everton away, and now Ipswich away in game week 19, which is not great. But he's still got that 10-pointer against Fulham, and he's still putting up pretty good numbers. Like against Ipswich, it was 0.74 expected goal involvement. Against Everton, it was 0.41. Brentford was 0.54. We know what this guy can do. The fixtures are still good moving forward. There is no point in using a transfer to get rid of him. My other 2 spots in my 3-4-3 are taken up by Mbeumo and Eze. I've only just bought Eze in, so as you might imagine, I've got no plans to sell him unless he becomes injured or something like that. But I think his minutes right now look pretty good. I mentioned this when I brought him in. I know that he missed game week 17 after not being long back from an injury, but this was a different injury to the previous one. And if you look at game weeks 13, 14 and 15, he came back during a time where there was games in quick succession, straight back from injury and started all 3. Then he got that foot problem in the Brighton game, but then he's straight back in with 87 minutes. So I think his minutes look good going forward. Chelsea at home is not a great fixture, but then you've got Leicester away, West Ham away, Brentford at home, next 3. That looks pretty decent. And with Mbeumo, the situation is the same as it has been for a long time. A lot of people pointed out back in game week 14 that the fixtures were getting more difficult for Mbeumo and Brentford in general. Since then, he's got 3 goals, 1 assist. I'm just taking it week by week. I mean, Southampton away, I'm obviously not going to sell him for, and I'm very happy that he's become somewhat of a differential for that game. But after that, it's Man City at home and Liverpool at home. If I've got the spare moves and there's nothing else I really want to do and I'm in a luxury position to get rid of him, I might look to get the funds to move Mbeumo back to Fernandes. For what it's worth, by the way, if I'd gone for Sarr over Eze, yes, I'd be 8 points down. But because Mbeumo went up in price last night and Fernandes has dropped since he got that suspension, I'd actually be able to afford Mbeumo to Fernandes in one move. As it stands, I'd have to make 2. But it is something I'm considering. I know people will think I'm absolutely crazy, but I look at the fixtures. They're pretty good for Brentford longer term, but they're not as good as they are for Man United. Like Man City at home, it's maybe not a bad time to play them, but Liverpool at home is tough. Then it's an away game against Palace. If you look at Man United's fixtures in comparison, between 21 and 29, they play all of Southampton at home, Ipswich at home, and Leicester away. They've also got home games against Brighton and Palace. One of the away ones is Spurs, which is not that difficult either. Although by the time you get to that game week, maybe Spurs will have some defenders back. And the reason that I mentioned game week 29 is because it's possible that with my chip strategy, I might end up wildcarding in game week 30. So I am quite keen to do Mbeumo back to Fernandes. I'm just not sure if I want to use 2 free transfers to do it. And obviously this week it doesn't matter because Mbeumo's got Southampton away. I'm more than happy to keep Mbeumo for the long term. I think he's a really solid pick. The only downside to my midfield this week is that Rodgers is suspended for that Leicester at home game. I would have loved to have played him this week and he would have covered my forwards really nicely. But again, I've got a goal and assist out of him in game week 19. I really can't complain too much. And then up front, because of that Morgan Rogers suspension, I'm now playing João Pedro against Arsenal at home. Had Rogers been available, I would have played a 3-5-2. It's not ideal because João Pedro's got Arsenal at home, which is not great for any attacker, but also because I've got double Arsenal defence. I could play Munoz instead, but I just don't see a clean sheet for Crystal Palace against Chelsea. And so I'd rather play the nailed-on penalty taker instead. If Munoz had like Everton at home or something like that, maybe I'd play 4-4-2. But as it stands, I'm going to play the Brighton man. Isak doesn't really need too much talking about. Spurs away is a pretty good fixture. The fixtures afterwards for Newcastle are decent as well. He's probably the best forward to have in your squad at the moment, so he's definitely staying. And then with Solanke, I've basically accepted that I'm not going to sell him unless I desperately need the funds by downgrading him to someone else. Like if there was an injury to, say, Palmer, for example, and I had to get rid of him and I had lots of spare money, then maybe I would do Solanke to Watkins or Solanke to Jackson. But I don't think there's any need to force that move. And I think with Newcastle at home, there's no cheaper forward that's massively better this week. The two players that people will probably mention are Chris Wood and Gabriel Jesus. Jesus in particular has done really well over the last few game weeks. He played 90 minutes, I believe it was last night, against Brentford, got a goal and an assist. It was 2 goals, 1 assist against Palace in game week 17. He's only 6.8 million, so he is cheaper. I just find it difficult to bring him in because despite the minutes over the last 3 game weeks, I'm still not 100% sure he's nailed going forward. I think Nwaneri starting right wing last night just complicates matters even more because Havertz was ill. So if Havertz was available, would he have played in midfield or would he have played up front? And if he played up front, would Jesus have played right or would he have had the night off and Nwaneri would have played there instead? So I like players that I don't have to think about week to week whether or not they're going to start. And I think with the way Jesus has played the last 3 game weeks, there is every chance he stays in the team. And the fixtures are pretty good from an attacking perspective. But I just don't want to take that risk. I'd rather roll the transfer. And also, I get it, right? We're thinking very long term here. But there is a good chance that Arsenal will blank in game week 29. So it's just another transfer out waiting to happen later on. So I'm not too interested in Gabriel Jesus. With Chris Wood, I absolutely get why people would go for him over Solanke if you're buying new. But from my perspective, yes, Chris Wood has penalties. I like him for that reason. But this week in game week 20, he's got Wolves away. Solanke's got Newcastle at home. There's not too much between them, I would say. So I'm happy to roll the transfer. In 21, Solanke has Arsenal away, which is not great. I might even bench him. But Chris Wood's got Liverpool, so it's not that much better. Then in 22, Chris Wood is definitely better with Southampton at home. And I may well make the move that week. But then Nottingham Forest have Bournemouth away, Brighton at home, Fulham away, Newcastle away, Arsenal at home, City at home. It's not a great fixture run. At the same time where Solanke has Leicester at home, Brentford away, Man United at home, Ipswich away, then also has City at home, but then has Bournemouth at home. The fixture run from 23 to 28 in particular is just better. So it's not that I think Solanke is so good that I've got to keep him. I'm just not convinced there's many players at his price or below that I need to swap to instead. So I'm pretty happy just to roll to 3 free transfers for game week 21 and then decide if there's something more interesting that I want to do. Even Solanke to Chris Wood doesn't free up that much money anyway. It's like 0.7 million, so it doesn't enable a massive move elsewhere. And when I check my suggested transfers on Fantasy Football Hub, which you can do using the link in the description below as well, it also recommends making no transfer. So I'm happy to have that confirmation bias. So I'm pretty much going to stick with a squad this week, but let's take a look at future weeks and what I might be considering doing there. So when I'm considering future weeks, there's 2 things I'm thinking about at the moment. One, what do I do with Brian Mbeumo when we get to game week 21? He's got City at home, followed by Liverpool at home. Do I keep him or do I look to move him on to someone else? And 2, how do I manage the double that's coming for Liverpool and Everton in 24 or 25, plus the blank game weeks that will happen in 29? Because it's quite likely that I will save my wild card until game week 30 onwards. So lots of free transfers are going to be needed. I'm going to skip game week 20 because I've just spoken about that. I'm probably going to roll. We'll move on to game week 21. For the most part, the team still looks pretty good. Solanke's got Arsenal away, but I can bench him for Rodgers against Everton away if I want to. That's why I'm not massively concerned about having to keep Solanke this week. Mbeumo's got City at home. It's not a terrible fixture, and after Liverpool at home, the fixtures do get better. But if I do want to sell him, it's probably going to be back to Bruno Fernandes, because despite how bad Man United might have been recently, Bruno has continued to tick over. He's got lots of points for me since kind of game weeks 9, 10, and the fixture run is good for Man United. So I could potentially have him Burmo for Southampton away this week, and then Fernandes for Southampton at home in 21, and I would need to free up 0.8 million. Now, at the moment, I would be able to do Solanke to Chris Wood, so that is something that I would consider. But if Chris Wood scores in game week 20, he's going to go up in price before I want to make the move in 21. And there's no other cheaper forwards that I would want to go for right now. That might change by the time we get to 21. But this is why I'm saying I've accepted that Solanke is probably just going to stay in my squad. So the other option would be to sell Gabriel. Now, I'm not in a rush to do that. But if I really want to do in Burmo to Fernandes, that is probably the best way for my squad. And I could bring in someone like Lewis Hall, who has a run of Wolves at home, Bournemouth at home, Southampton away, between game weeks 21 and 23. And that looks quite nice. I'd basically have Hall against Wolves at home and Fernandes against Southampton at home, rather than Gabriel against Spurs at home, where I would back Spurs to score, and in Burmo against City at home. I'd also still have one free transfer. So it's really not the end of the world if I make those two moves, because the squad then looks pretty good moving forward. If we go to future weeks, you'll see in 24 that there's a potential double for Liverpool. By the way, if you're using the My Team tool, click the 3 dots at the bottom. And when you go on predictive fixtures, make sure that it's enabled. That will put Ben Crellin's predicted fixtures into the tool, right? So that's why they're there for 24. It's not a guarantee, but if it doesn't happen in 24, it's almost certainly going to happen in 25 instead. And the move that I might look at outside of that in Burmo to Fernandes transfer is possibly game week 23, going from Raya to Alisson and just having my triple up on Liverpool ready by game week 23, because they've got Ipswich at home, followed by Bournemouth away and a potential double against Everton, or Wolves at home and a potential double against Everton in 25. So I think having that triple up is quite nice. I know it's very boring going for triple Liverpool and having 2 of them as defenders, but unless there's injuries to the likes of Diaz, Jota, Gakpo, etc., I'm not going to be confident about any of their minutes if they're all available, and I'm not sure if I want to take that risk. Also, if the double goes in 25, which I think is more likely right now, if you look at the rest of my attackers, there's not really any players that I would massively want to sell. It's not perfect fixtures, don't get me wrong, but like Isak against City away, I'm not going to want to replace him anytime soon. Solanke could play instead of João Pedro. Eze's got Everton at home, Fernandes against Spurs away, Palmer against Brighton away, and Rodgers against Ipswich at home. Like, don't get me wrong, if Diaz or Gakpo, whoever it was going to start both of the games in the double, I'd rather have them than any of these other attackers that don't have a double. But it's not a massive problem, I don't think. So I think that's a move that I'm considering making. And by the way, if I do the 2 moves in 21 and just that 1 move for Alisson in 23, I've still got like 3 other transfers by the time we get to 25 to bring some Everton players in as well. Maybe McNeil for Rodgers, maybe João Pedro to whoever's playing up front for Everton at the time. There's plenty of options there. I could even bring in a defender like Mikalenko. I just feel like I'm pretty well set up for future weeks, and I don't consider there being a huge amount of transfers that I need to make. And then by the time we get to 29, hopefully I can just continue having rolled and then just get rid of some of these players that might blank. And again, there's probabilities at the top of which players might blank in game week 29 if you want to go ahead and plan for that. So lots of things to think about. But for this week, I'm almost certainly going to roll. But next week, there is a chance that Bruno Fernandes might come back into my team. But overall, my strategy right now is to bring in players that are absolutely nailed, that if they're fit and available, I don't have to worry about moving forward, because rolling transfers is going to be really important unless you're willing to blow your wild card early, which I don't think I am. If you enjoyed that video, make sure to give it a like, hit that subscribe button, check out Fantasy Football Hub using the link in the description below. If you've listened on podcast, make sure to rate 5 stars too, and I'll catch you tomorrow for final thoughts.